In 2018, US President Donald Trump famously tweeted that trade wars are good and easy to win. Since then, we've had a lot more talk of tariffs, trade wars, and worries about what it all means for us here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. But what exactly is a tariff, and what does it mean to be in a trade war? Join me for this short taster lecture on the politics of trade wars and find out why countries launch trade wars and how other countries respond when they do. Kia ora. My name is Matt Castle. I'm a senior lecturer in political science and international relations at Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington. So what is a trade war? A trade war is an economic dispute between countries. It happens when a country uses protectionism or restrictions on international trade, and another country puts similar restrictions in place in retaliation. Now this goes beyond more minor disagreements over trade policy, including the use of trade barriers, which are pretty common and don't usually spiral out of control. Trade wars are also not a recent invention. Some historical examples include the Anglo-Dutch trade wars in the mid-1600s, where England used rules about who could transport goods to England and its colonies to undermine the Dutch naval power, and the Chicken War in the 1960s between Europe and the United States of America, where the European Economic Community imposed tariffs on US chicken imports, with the US responding with tariffs on European trucks, brandy, and starch. The term trade war suggests a conflict with different combatants, each trying to hurt each other to achieve some goal. So, what are the weapons in a trade war? The weapons in a trade war are the different forms of trade barriers or restrictions on trade. These might include tariffs, quotas, which are limits to the quantity of imports or exports, subsidies, or non-tariff barriers like product standards. Among these, the most common weapon of choice in current trade wars is a tariff. So, what is a tariff? In simple terms, a tariff is a tax that governments impose on imported goods. It is levied as a percentage of the value of the product. Typical tariffs in New Zealand range from 0 to 5%, but in the 2025 trade war between the United States and China, we saw tariffs as high as 245% on some products entering into the USA. What often gets lost in the discussion on trade wars is that these taxes are not paid by the company exporting a product, but by the importer, who ultimately passes on the cost to you, the consumer, as well as to the exporting company in the targeted country. Some people say that nobody wins in a trade war, and from what I've described, you might be inclined to agree. If governments are hurting their own consumers and importers, why would they enter into a trade war? Well, there's one important group that we haven't talked about yet, and that's domestic producers who might be competing with foreign producers. If an imported good becomes more expensive, then consumers are likely to buy the domestic good. This means that domestic producers might benefit even as consumers and importers in the same country are harmed. This leads us to a central theme of political science. For any policy, there are likely to be winners and losers. The calculation that governments make is that the support they get from import competing firms will outweigh the loss of support from consumers and any exporters who are hurt by retaliation. So what can other countries do when they face new trade barriers from a protectionist country? Generally, countries have three choices: accommodating, retaliating, and bypassing. If countries choose to accommodate a new trade barrier, they are accepting a less favourable situation. They might try and offer some sort of concession in some other policy area to convince the protectionist country to remove the trade barrier. Retaliating means raising barriers in turn. Because a country's barriers are costly for their own consumers and importers, governments that want to retaliate have to be strategic. They choose barriers on products aimed to maximise the political pain for the protectionist country while minimising the economic pain for their own consumers and importers. The idea is to try and force their counterpart back to the bargaining table by creating political pressure from that other country's exporters. Finally, bypassing means looking for ways to reduce the impact of new trade barriers. This could mean looking for new trade agreements with other partners, looking for alternative markets for exports and alternative sources of imports. The problem is that it's not easy to quickly change trading relationships, making this an option only for some countries and for some products. So the next time you hear about trade conflict, don't ask whether it's good or bad. Rather ask who it's good for and who will be hurt. There are always winners and losers, and this lies at the heart of the politics of trade. As we face increasing global uncertainty and disruptions, it's never been more important to understand the drivers and impacts of trade disputes and trade wars and what other countries might do about them. Come and learn more. Study for a Bachelor of Politics at Te Herenga Waka, Victoria University of Wellington.